Right, John, we're in Hungary. It's very hot, but we're also kind of in new and old surround. What's different this year?
We're here and it's hot, super hot. I think everyone's been struggling a bit. Today I did a Charles Leclerc interview earlier on. Ferrari set it all up, so aircon broke. I think it got up to 41 degrees inside or something. So it's hurriedly done downstairs in the shade. So I think he was happy and I was happy as well.
How have you found the day? It's always a bit crazy on a Thursday, isn't it? We're rushing from media sessions, starts off at Haas earlier on in the day and then ends up, obviously goes in World Championship order, Max Verstappen at the end.
Well, I think actually the day started earliest for you. I think I was driving in this morning. You filed the first story on Magnussen, wasn't it? So that was our starting point.
Pretty big news to start the day. Maybe not the most sensational, explosive of the driver market stories this year, but yeah, Magnussen leaving Haas. It was interesting to hear him speak about the situation. You know, obviously there was sort of a tone of, I don't necessarily agree with the decision, but he's old enough and wise enough to understand it. Although actually, I looked this up, 31. He's only 31. In my mind,
I remember that age.
Me too, actually, a couple of years ago, but there we go. It just seems striking that he's just been around for so long. That's just something that struck me. But yeah, I think he's very much, hoping he can stick around in Formula One. I think he's realistic at the same time because we all know what's going on with Ollie Behrman coming in, potentially with Kimi Antonelli coming in. That's two existing drivers that are gonna drop out. So Magnussen's like, look, I'll do my best to get whatever seat I can in F1, but if it doesn't happen, he loves racing in sports cars. He's got that experience of racing in IMSA in 2021. He's with his father at Le Mans as well, of course. But yeah, it was just interesting to hear a sort of basically in that press release, which is how we get that ahead of time. How I was able to get that story ready on my phone. Io Komatsu, team principal, saying, look, we'd be open to having Kevin stick around in some role. Now again, he wouldn't be drawn on that in his session actually at the very end of the day. But Kevin himself was saying, if it's some sort of advisor thing, yeah, I would be open to that. Obviously, if he gets a job with another F1 team, that's not happening. But it's it's the sort of thing he's like, I've known these people for such a long time, I'd rather stick around and see what happens. So I thought that was quite sweet, really.
Yeah, I think the driver market, I think we're in the same kind of almost Groundhog Day, mainly involves of, has Carlos Sainz made his decision yet? I had that conversation today. The answer is still no. And I think everything's resting on that. I think one of the most interesting stories was Roberto Quincaro, our kind of Italian correspondent, found out that Williams is looking at options for the second half of the season. See, Logan Sargeant's not delivering the points they want or need for the Constructors' Championship. So I think they're evaluating options. I think Ocon was on the list. Roberto says he even went as far as the seat fitting. But Alpine have said, nope, basically, we're keeping him because it wouldn't make much sense to give one of your top drivers to a rival you're fighting in the Constructors' Championship. So we've had that. And I think you spoke to Logan as well, didn't you, earlier? How was he?
Very much so. He gave polite answers. He answered every question except one, which was about, what could he comment on the perception that American drivers, when they come to F1, which is obviously very Eurocentric, with the team being based here and the traditional fan base, the majority of them being based here, what's his experience be like that? He's like, actually, not to comment on that one, fair enough. But he answered every question, but he had the air of a driver that, I don't know, it's such an interesting change in him from when we first met him at the Williams. Well, when we first met him as he was announced as an F1 driver at the Williams factory at the start of 2023, when honestly I was blown away by his confidence. I was like, this kid, like, wow, can I have a little bit of what he's having or whatever? But he's obviously got into F1, found it very, very hard, and admits that. And I think was open in saying, look, last year wasn't good, but this year is good, but no one's noticing because to a certain extent, the sort of the die is cast. People, unless he gets on the podium or wins a race or something like that, the perception of him isn't going to change. And that's obviously not helped by the fact that things within the team haven't gone as how he would have liked. Now, when you've got the team principal openly chatting about replacing you in the media, in public, also obviously, of course, behind closed doors, that's one thing. But he's sort of saying, look, I feel like I've been driving better this year, but I've not been getting any reaction, any sort of positive feedback, even from Williams. Now, again, he clarified that when I asked him to sort of say, is that a change from last year? He was like, no, even last year, there's no pats on the back in Formula One. It's, it's a big business and you're expected to perform. So I just found that was interesting, but he just sounds a bit defeated now, understandably. He also talked about how, whatever I say, I'm going to get criticised, so it almost doesn't matter. So I can understand his position. And unless you're in a top team and getting the top results, you're just, a lot of the time, even the best performances fly under the radar. So he's in a tricky situation. But that said, But if you're good enough, you make it, and you don't make the mistakes that he has.
Yeah, I think it's similar to the Sergio Perez session earlier on. You know, he's a similar situation, 2 races to prove himself. Team has said it's unsustainable for him to continue not scoring points, so he needs to turn things around. But he was quite defiant. He says, I'm used to pressure, this is why I'm here, this is how I perform. He kept referencing, say, you know, that's the same mantra I'll have in Abu Dhabi this year, it's the same mantra I'll have next year. I'm here, rest of the season, I'm here next year. So he's pushing on. He knows he needs to do better. He says he was in the factory this week working simulator, trying to find improvements, trying to get to the bottom of what's coming on. But I think he's also, you know, reading between the lines, knows he needs to deliver, and his future will be decided by the points he scores in these 2 races.
It's not just his future on the line. We know that Liam Lawson's driven that car in a filming day, but effectively sort of quasi-test, assessing his potential. But even if he impressed Red Bull, I don't know if you've got any insight on that, John, but even if he did impress Red Bull, it's not automatic that he would get Perez's seat if they opted to replace them, because they could surely promote Yuki Tsunoda, and I think he had a bit of chat about that.
Yeah,
bit got his elbows out a little bit.
It was interesting. Yeah, because Liam's had the test. I think, you know, no alarm bells ringing. I think they were quite happy with what he did in the car, so they've got their reference now of if they decide things aren't working with Checo, you know, where the option is there. I think he's still, from what I understand, the preferred route. But obviously Yuki, you know, feels he's got his RB contract in place for next year. He was asked, you know, quite openly, do you think it would be a bit weird if Liam beat you to this seat? And he went, yeah, it would be weird. You know, he thinks he's done enough. Then I said to him, but equally, you know, if you're Laurent Mekies, team principal at RB, you're fighting in a Constructors' Championship fight, increasingly tough with Haas. You aren't going to want to let Yuki go and bring someone else in who potentially can't score the regular points. So he's in quite an interesting situation where the team's desire of what's best for them may not actually be what he ultimately wants, which is that Red Bull seat.
Certain, not parallels, but not even quite the reverse of the Sargeant or Ocon getting in at Williams situation, but you can sort of see the links there. Now, I'm checking my notes here because I want to ask this in a very special way. There's been some technical intrigue going on. Let's not say anything too controversial on that. But no, the point is that actually is really interesting, because fundamentally what the FIA is looking at and what we're about to discuss has impact on who potentially could be winning Formula One races and are winning Formula One races. So let's start at McLaren. If anybody's been taking a very, very, very close look at their rear brakes, they might have spotted something quite interesting. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so this is a little story. I mean, I don't think it's the kind of it's caused a lot of interest and chatter in the paddock. I don't think it's any kind of game-changing element. But if you look at the rear brake drum of the McLaren, there's a tiny little hole you can see. We've had images of it that's been open at some races. I think there's a shot of the Austria sprint race. It was open. I looked at my phone. Before the cars went out in the Spanish Grand Prix. You see this hole open. Now, the regulations don't actually allow holes to be open. This apparently has been used for access to a sensor the team can use to monitor brake flow. But Red Bull felt this shouldn't be allowed. This hole's got to be closed. So since the Austria main Grand Prix, we now see a bit of tape that's covered it. So it's a little bit, I don't think it's not a big thing. It wasn't illegal. Just fell into that area where the FI, just a gentle little nudging reminder of where the regulations are, and it'll go away. But I think the pace of Lando in the Austrian race, we didn't see much in Silverstone, it wasn't hot, but I think this weekend will be interesting. If McLaren maintains the promise it has on long runs, the issue will disappear into the background. But the second...
this is slightly more of a game.
This is quite interesting, because the fight at the front, you know, a lot of the gains that McLaren's made in the last 12 months, Mercedes has made in recent races, is all to do with car balance. These cars are really tricky because you're dealing with low speed understeer and high speed oversteer, and it's really tricky to get an aero balance that fits both. Best way to do it is to have a front wing that, you know, is up in the low speed, so you get that turn in and then kind of flexes down in high speed, so you're not getting, so the aero balance shifts backwards and better balances. And the FIA up to now has been quite happy with what teams have been up to, but it's emerged, a note was sent by FI's Nicolas Tombassis to the teams this week saying in Belgium, some selected teams, so I don't know how many, could be 1, could be 3, could be 4, could be all the front runners, are going to be picked. So video cameras must be fitted in a certain place on the nose, and they're going to monitor areas of kind of front wing flexibility on the flaps and the end plates. Good theory about them testing down. No change to test at the moment. No stipulation that, you know, wings are, this is going to be legally going to be thrown out. But it's a kind of information gathering exercise for the FIA. But it could be interesting, because if teams suddenly can't do it, they can't get this car balanced, suddenly teams that were in the window could be out of it. So it's not a game changer for now, but could have some good implications as we go forwards. So we'll see where that one goes, and we'll be back for more fun tomorrow, I think.
After like a dive into an ice bath, ideally.